Well, when I was about 7, I found a very pretty, colorful animal out in the field, and I picked it up somehow safely. I don't know how I did it, and I brought it to my mother, and she told me it was a coral snake, which is poisonous, but it's kind of not as fast moving as some of the other more dangerous snakes. And instead of chiding me for grabbing a snake, I don't know how I did it instinctively behind the head, but instead of chiding me for even playing with a dangerous animal, she instead asked me if I wanted to make a hat band for my father's cowboy hat. And so that was the start of a little mini enterprise we had out in the country, which was to rid our family 5-acre land from any bad snakes. So we'd catch coral snakes, copperheads, the occasional rare rattlesnake, and we would make hat bands and belts and such. And that was always an interesting adventure. Over 25 years. And I started younger because I had a job during the summer in high school, and I developed a database program for our library system. It was a very poor school district, and they didn't have anyone else to do it. And I understood after I returned to see how they were doing that they had been using it for about 8 years after I left. So I guess it worked pretty well for them. It kept the inventory for the whole school district of all their library books. And insofar as starting in technology, I actually started when I was a child, because my father, although he was a farmer's son, after he left the Army, he went to school to learn electronics, and so he became an electronics specialist for the civil service for the Air Force. So he did a lot of electronics for cargo planes, fighter jets, I mean everything that the Army used, or the Air Force used, that is. And so when I was about 8 years old, he first taught me how to solder electronics, so I started that interest very early. Early in my career especially, I did, even in college, going to school, there was a higher amount of men in the technical classes than ladies, although I did have some lady professors, so that helped certainly. But yeah, even in classes, sometimes some of the guys would, uh, show me a little bit of sexism, I guess, making sure that the girl in the room understood what the professor was saying, that kind of thing. But that started disappearing once you establish that you have a brain and that you can do the work. We'd have a study group and team groups to complete programming, and we'd stay up all night programming, and they could see that I was doing more than my share of the work. And so then I start to get respect. And that kind of is how it was early in my career. At the start of every job, I had to establish myself, show that I knew what I was talking about. Occasionally in meetings, I might have a man, if it was a room full of guys and we're all technical, they would ask me to take notes, and I would assure them I was more than confident in their note-taking ability, that anyone else could take notes for the group. But a lot of times they would turn to me as the girl, thinking that I should play the role of secretary, and a lot of times I had to decide when it was not detrimental to my career to defer to someone else in the room and say, you know what, my handwriting's horrible, I really think someone else should take notes. So I try to be as politic as I could. On occasion, even talking to fellow technical folks on the phone, I would get talked down to because I was a lady, and that was one thing that I simply wouldn't put up with, and sometimes I would even have to crassly explain to them that I could, think as well as any man. But I would always try to make myself fit in. I think one of the best compliments I had was, well, it was kind of a compliment, but I kind of a side compliment, that my guys that reported to me, I had a lot of gentlemen that reported me through my career in IT management, and sometimes they would forget I was just one of the guys. They just thought I was one of the guys, and I would do as much physical work, lifting servers, soldering electronics, pulling floor tiles. The only time they noticed was when I was heavily pregnant with my first child, and that I would start to lift or do something, the guys would just freak out, because they were like, "Oh my God, no, you can't do that. We keep forgetting you're not a guy." And I'm like, "No, that's fine. I can handle it." So that was always interesting. That balance. I do like my husband to open the door for me and make sure I get in the car correctly. I like to be treated like a lady, but at the same time, I don't want to be treated like I don't have a brain and that I can't do the technical work.